Welcome to episode 337 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 19th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me either on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at @LMS_United. On Threads and Instagram, you can find me at School Librarians United, and on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Friends, it is now my pleasure to introduce our sponsor to the podcast, Junior Library Guild. What if I told you there's a collection development service that can save you time and increase circulation rates? Junior Library Guild does that and more. With their team of experienced media library specialists and publishing industry professionals, every title they recommend is vetted for my readers and organized into categories based on reading level and interest. Ultimately, Junior Library Guild helps my students foster a love of reading. Use the code UNITED15 to receive 15 free books in your first shipment. And now for today's episode, Library Inventory Best Practices, and my conversation with Katie Moose. Friends, I'm so excited. Katie Moose, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Amy. I'm happy to be back.
Friends, we're in for a treat today. Katie, would you introduce yourself, tell us where you live, and a little bit about your library, your schedule, and your students?
Sure. So my name's Katie Moose, and I am a high school librarian in North Carolina. I am in a fairly suburban, sometimes leaning towards rural, depending on the day. But we are in the Charlotte metro area, so one of the sort of suburban communities outside of Charlotte. I am in a fairly large high school. We have about 1,800 students and over 100 staff members. So we're pretty big. And we have over 31 campuses in my district. So we're a pretty good mid-sized district in our state. And I'm on a flexible schedule. I am in a building all by myself. The library is its own building, so that comes with its own special issues and challenges. Trying to get the kids in and walk in, and I am in my 14th year in the library and my 14th year in education. I was not a teacher before coming into the library, like so many people. I spend a lot of my time working with my teachers, doing instructional support. Our state has moved to a different data management system this year, so that's coming with its own special challenges as we're all getting to know that system. I am technology support for my teachers and my students. That obviously takes up a lot of time. And I do a lot of PD for my teachers on campus, covering all different kinds of topics, whether it's Canvas support. I love doing escape rooms, so showing them how I can do that for their content area. Sharing the resources that we have, talking about research, supporting our students. We are an IB high school, so we also have our IB program. So I do a lot of support with those students, whether it is working on their IAs or their extended essays. Those of you who are in the IB world, this is not unfamiliar territory to you. And I also am a Battle of the Books coach. That's one of my favorite things that I get to do, working with my kids who love to read and doing our Battle of the Books competition. And I serve on our state board for NC SLAMA, which is North Carolina School Library Media Association. And I serve as our networking director. So we have a few things that fall under networking. Brew Crew, which was started with now our past president, Christy Sartain. So during COVID, when we were all feeling very alone and very isolated, so we meet twice a month on Friday evenings and Saturday mornings. And it's just a great casual way to come, talk, chat, get resources. We are whatever anyone needs it to be. We also have our library book club, our NC Slamma book club that's run by Jennifer Long, who's been on the podcast before. Jennifer does a fantastic job, so we meet once a month with that. And I think we finally, after many years of trying, are going to be able to revive our mentoring program because I have someone wonderful who's willing to help lead it because I cannot lead all of the things. I'm excited about that. Serve on our Battle of the Books committees as well for our state organization, which is one of my favorite things, picking those book titles that we read every year and getting involved in the competitions and working with the kids. I have my national board certification in library media, and so also help provide support as part of our national board support group through NC Slamma, which is a great way because we've got so many people seeking out that certification. So I'm always happy to help wherever I can. And then when I'm not doing all those things, trying to do fun stuff with my kids at school, like I talked about in my previous episode. So lots of fun passive programming activities and things like that. Our school year, we just finished our third full week of school. Here in the South, sometimes we start fairly early, but we'll be done before Memorial Day. So that is sort of the bonus. And we finish our semester before Christmas. So those are some of the bonuses to starting early. But yes, so we had 3 full weeks before Labor Day. So I was ready for a day off. Yes.
I bet. Something I heard, you also participate in the book club for school librarians. Could you give us an idea of what is a book that you might read for the book club for school librarians? Are these books in your collection or books for professional development?
Oh, no, these are totally fun books. This is fun book club. I should say, and I also host a staff book club for my teachers at my school as well. But we absolutely focus on fun and pleasure reading, both at my school with our staff book club and with our state organization. So we were looking for some lighter fun reads for the summer. We read Beautiful Ruins by Jess Walters. That was our August book. Yes, we just finished August. And then we are going to read The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. That is our September book. We did in June. I have to think. It's all blending together, Amy. I had thrown out that it's the 250th anniversary of Jane Austen's birth, so there's tons of huge celebrations for that. So we read Pride and Prejudice. And then in October, because we have our state conference in October, we are going to be reading Who Killed Christopher Goodman by Alan Wolfe. So he's one of our local authors who comes to our conference. So we're reading a book with him. We try and really have a mix. We take suggestions, email that out to the group, and then whatever are the first, usually about top 6 books that get nominated, then a vote goes out and we do ranked choice voting to determine what's the winner. So now for November, we have voted The Woman in Cabin 11. I think I'm getting the title right, or It's the sequel to The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. I'm probably getting the title. I'm probably getting the title wrong off the top of my head. Yes.
I'm just impressed because when people ask me what I'm reading, I look at them and I just pull up my Libby app because I'm just sitting there going, I'm reading all these things that are in my collection or I want to buy and put in my collection. And I'm just impressed that you have time to do everything you do and then also have what I consider pleasure reading, adults, reading for your own benefit and just not because you're buying books or you're doing professional development or any of the many other things that you're doing. So good for you for demonstrating a willingness to sort of set aside some of those obligatory reads and make some time to talk to adults about things that are fun. But we just use the word fun.
Yes. I highly recommend it because it's been a great way for us to connect. We're a very long state, so it's hard for all of us to get together for things in person. So it's great for our state book club that we can get together and do this. And then for the last 3 years, we've gotten together at conference in person so that we could have an in-person meeting of book club. And for my staff book club, it was something my predecessor had done at the school. And when I've hosted some other little bookish events for my staff, they're like, we should have a book club. So I said, okay. I threw it out there to my staff who's interested, and I got a really good response back. So we usually have about 10. I have about 10 other staff members, not including myself, who come on a regular basis, and it's a really big mix between not just my English teachers, but I've got science teachers, I've got one of our EC teachers, I've got some of our leadership who have come, our foreign language teachers, so it's a really big mix, yes.
I question, and this is always a question because when it comes to money, are you providing the book or is it a BYO?
I am not providing the book. So it is, we do the same voting. I basically copied what was working with our state book club organization and do the same thing with my staff. So we just read for our August book, The Favorites by Lane Fargo. It's a really good, fun, bingey, guilty pleasure read. And I know you're an audiobook lover, Amy, so I definitely recommend the audiobook because it's all about the world of competitive ice dancing. There is a difference between ice dancing and figure skating, which I did not quite realize. And Johnny Weir narrates one of the characters if you have watched the Olympics in recent years, and now he does commentary. So the audiobook is fantastic. It's a full cast audio, so I highly recommend that if anybody's looking for a good, fun read. But yes, we do read them independently. So I try and think about something that hopefully we can get on Libby, find online. We're also a group where someone will say, hey, I just saw this was $1.99 on Amazon for the Kindle book today. If you want to go out and get a copy. I have definitely pushed to my staff, and I try and remind them about the free ALC program from Libro FM. I don't know if everybody is familiar with that, but as educators and as librarians, you can get advanced listening copies with Libro FM. And they have tons of titles they release every month. I usually see probably about 40 titles that get released every month. And it's a huge wide range from kids' books, middle grade, YA, adult books, nonfiction, fiction.
Katie, I'm going to tell you right now, what we really should do is just have an episode on this. And I'm going to throw out a name some of you may know, Molly Detman. I'm aware Molly Detman also does a staff book club. And it may be that we just have to have this episode come up at some point where we can really do that deep dive and sort of follow this idea of best practices. Today's conversation, library inventory best practices. And you and I, as somebody, we've been doing this a long time. I feel confident talking about this topic, but I'll tell you what, it might be that staff book club is going to have to be an episode that we record in the future. And I'm going to get Molly Detman to join us because she shares out those photos each month when she meets with her teachers as well. I'm so glad that you're here today. Thank you so much, Katie. Listeners, hopefully will remember the first time you and I got together and had a chat, episode 308, Passive Programming 2.0. And I think this is a fantastic episode. I love passive programming. You're in the high school, but I think it also had some very applicable programming that you could also use with our middle grade and our elementary program as well. If I were to walk into your island of a library, because you're sort of this island building that students walk through, what passive programming do you happen to have out the week 3 of the school year?
What I always like to tell people, passive programming is really just centers. If you were working at an elementary school, passive programming is basically just centers. It's all the things you might have had as a classroom teacher for your kids to work on independently, or they might have been themed on a task. So I always tell that to people when they're like, I feel too overwhelmed about passive programming. Like, I don't know what to do. it can be really simple. It's low stress. It can be low prep. You don't have to go crazy. I can go a little crazy um, in terms of that. So I always have, some of my same things that are always sitting out, coloring sheets and color your own bookmarks, colored pencils, crayons, markers. I always have yarn out and crochet hooks. One of my regular students, she took some home and she was like, Miss Moose, is it okay if I take this home? I said, yeah, and it's fine. Just whatever you don't use you can bring back. If you use it all, that's okay too. Um, so I always have those sitting out, different puzzles, different games, chess sets. I've got two of my freshmen who they're like, can I come and play chess every day at lunch? Absolutely. Come on in. So they get the chess set out every day and are just sitting there happily playing different games. I've got card games sitting out, stickers and cards and things like that. So if kids want to write a note for someone, magazines, if kids need to cut them up for a project, construction paper, fun craft scissors, just tape and glue, glue sticks, all the things that the kids are usually looking for when they're working on a project, things like that. So yes, so I'm working on some different passive programming this year. So this year I've got a little every year. In April for School Library Month, I do a big school library bingo card, and kids can complete different amounts of squares on the card and earn different prizes. And so one of my regular students, she just came in this week and said, Miss Moose, when are you doing library bingo again? It's like, not till April because it's a lot of work. So I have to have time to prepare. But I told her, well, be on the lookout because I have put together some reading challenge bingo cards for the kids to complete. So I've got them spread out every 2 months so that kids have 2 months to complete it because I realize in high school they have a lot of other work, extracurriculars, activities, jobs, all the things. They need more time. So I've got a September, October one that I'm going to release out to the kids, and I'm going to release it out to the teachers as well, because I had some good buy-in with my teachers from School Library Bingo in April as well. So there's different little tasks, simple things like read a book with the word fall in the title. But because, as Amy said, I'm an island all by myself, the center square on each of the bingo challenge cards is get a book from the library. So if they want to make a bingo, they've got to come in and check out a book from the library. And it's just going to be something simple. Just tell me what you read. Tell me a little something about it. I even have some little cards. I'm hoping I can maybe get them to write like a little review, and then I'll set it with the book and set it out as a display to acknowledge them. So I've got that coming up. Hopefully, if I can get it going, I sometimes like to put out, it's right around usually September 21st is International Day of Peace. And that is in honor of Sadako. So I'm sure many of you have probably read Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes. And so every year they decorate the statue of Sadako with chains of origami cranes in honor of peace. And you can send cranes to be hung on the statue. So I've done that before with my kids. I always have origami paper sitting out, but if I can get a chance to put my little sign out to encourage them, we'll do that. And then obviously now it's September 1st, so as Amy and I are recording this. So we've entered the Burr month. So now it's time to be thinking about the fall activities. So I've been looking at all the fall and Halloween themed activities and thinking about what I can do with my kids. If anyone's seen those fun ghost paintings where people take just like an old kind of ugly vintage photo and then they paint little ghosts and little figurines in it. So I've got some pictures, some fun pictures that I'm going to try and let the kids do some ghost paintings on. Got some other... I always have lots of ideas brewing in my head. It's just, will I get the time to set it out? And then hopefully, I'm hoping I've been dealing with computer distribution to do library orientation with my kids, do some fun things, just to get their opinions about what's going on. I have one teacher who basically has all the freshmen. So she said, well, if you want to get them, I've basically got all of them. I said, I do. So we're going to try and make that happen. So that's what's going on in my world right now.
Impressive. All right. So, friends, I am so excited to find somebody willing to do a deep dive on the importance of conducting an inventory with a seasoned librarian, a national board certified school librarian such as Katie Moose. Veteran librarians have inventory stories. We have nightmares. We have epiphanies. We have unforgettable discoveries. And these are all learned expertise, which comes with doing the job and recognizing the value of what we do. So let's get started, first of all, because you and I sort of started to put some ideas together, and it really sort of shocked me because I've never called it a visual inventory. But today we're going to draw an important distinction between a visual inventory and a digital inventory, because I know I've been doing a visual inventory. I just never recognized it for what it was worth. So let's start off our conversation today with something that was, I hope, eye-opening to other listeners as well, a visual inventory, because this is a thing.
Yes. And I'm sure that some of you are thinking visual inventory. Well, you're doing that all the time as you're shelving, if you're moving books, shifting books, you're seeing those books that the spine is one color and the front of the book is another color, meaning that it has sat so long on that shelf, it has completely faded. Those spine labels have faded so that you can hardly read them. So before you start scanning all of these books into your digital inventory, I think it's a great time to just walk around and look. Whether you're new to your library, whether you've been in your library a long time, it's always a good idea to just walk around and look at your shelves. What looks dusty? What has sat so long that you have to kind of pry really hard to get it off of the shelf? What are those things that you can tell when you tidied up the shelf, nothing has moved on that shelf? So it's those kind of things. And also just the ratty, the torn, the books that are not in good condition. When Amy and I were talking about this episode, what came to my mind is something that Lauren Mobley said on an episode a long time ago, that I want the books in my collection to be the books that my students deserve. And I do think our kids deserve good-looking books. And if you're just sending home old ratty-tatty books, and I get it, that those Dog Man, your Diary of a Wimpy Kid, your Captain Underpants, they see some love, they see some use, they see some abuse. But if you're seeing that, then that tells you, this is what I need to order more copies of. I need to refresh my copies. It's just like you wouldn't keep wearing the same shirt with a million holes in it to work. Like, you want to present a certain image, a professional image, a good image. And we want our libraries to look the same. We want them to look good, to look inviting, to look welcoming.
I jokingly said at one point, if I have to vacuum the top of my books, those books should not be in the library any longer. I don't need a digital inventory to give myself permission to simply grab every book that has so much dust on the top of it that I would have to vacuum it in order to move it. And friends, I'm not going to lie, I've had books like that in my collection. And, they were usually in the bottom on a corner. And I don't need to scan every book in the library to be given that permission. I can trust my professional judgment to say, you know what, dust. But by the same token, if we're going by visual only, also recognize that brand new books that never get circulated stay looking brand new. And this is where your digital inventory becomes vital, because while looking at the books, oftentimes we can tell which ones either need to be chucked or they need to be replaced. So we have collections that regularly circulate, and they need to be replaced because they have been loved so much that those books are beyond, they're no longer intact so much. Sort of, if somebody dropped the book, it will fall apart.
They're held together by a wish and a prayer, some of them. They're those Velveteen Rabbit books. They have just been loved to death, and the fur has come off, but it's time.
But the digital inventory is where a lot of our professional judgment is going to be backed up with statistics. We can now take solid information and justify what our intuition is already telling us. So let's go ahead and talk about a digital inventory is going to be different than just casually walking around. And we're going to sort of break this down piece by piece. But my understanding has always been that a digital inventory is when we effectively mark everything in our collection as lost and then proceed to systematically check everything in. The books that are checked out to our students and our staff aren't lost because they are checked out to people. But the books on our shelves, until they get checked in, are lost. And that is an inventory. We're going to scan everything.
Yes. And that digital inventory, then you finally have, like Amy said, you've got your data and your information to back up what has already become obvious to you just by walking around your shelves. I know in my library, this is my 4th year in my building. And when I was going through looking at things, there were books, they were in great shape, but they had been purchased in the year 2000 and had never been checked out once. So this is your permission. This is your information to say. And at a high school, that means we've gone through 5, 6 groups of whole students have come and gone, and not one single person has checked out this book. So it's time. It's time to let it go.
Well, and friends, remember, our libraries are time capsules. Our libraries are time capsules revealing priorities and purchases that have been made by a myriad of professionals, hopefully professionals, who have come through our spaces and exercise that judgment on how an annual budget is going to be spent. But it also reflects what is allowed to reside on our shelves, what has lingered on our shelves, and it's imperative of the professional who happens to be there at the time to start making some decisions, because just because it's there doesn't mean it should stay there. We have this sort of time capsule thing that also happens in our office. If we're lucky enough to have a workroom or a back room, all of a sudden you as the professional can make those decisions, because a lot of times things go into our spaces to die. People say, hey, Amy, this was in my classroom. I don't need it, but I'm sure somebody else does. So it's going to come here.
Oh, yes. Do you get, Amy, at the end of the year, that pile of cords, and they're sticky because they're half covered in duct tape because someone taped them to the floor to keep them in place? And they're like, do you want this? And I'm in my mind, I go, no, but I take it so that it will just go in the trash can where it should have been in the first place. But yes, I'm sure many people, we've all inherited those libraries with those grayish pieces of equipment, that gray beige that every piece of technology was in the 80s, 90s that many of us remember. If you've still got that, you can let that go. I've always had a box of the random odds and ends cords. And so it's like, okay. And every year I just throw a little more out. No one asked for it this year. Okay. Out it goes, out it goes. There's always those materials, both technology and in our library spaces. Those giant sets of encyclopedias. Those are exactly the things that come to my mind.
Absolutely. And you mentioned digital because oftentimes we are also responsible for a certain amount of digital technology, and something that gets dated almost as quickly as our book content is technology. And if you don't know what that device does or why we have it, there's a very good chance that it's been years since it's ever been used. And we, again, have to trust our professionalism when it comes to deciding what is going to stay, what is going to go. Inventory, I want to sort of, when we look at we've talked about what an inventory is, but the why is really something that is hard to nail down if you aren't a librarian. If you're a librarian, you know why we're taking inventory. But it's really vitally important because oftentimes inventory isn't something that has something comparable for teachers. Teachers don't typically do an inventory of anything. They're in charge of a room. It's their space. And what they do in their room is up to them. But there isn't something comparable. So when I have to do inventory, that's not something that connects with teachers in any meaningful way. And so I'll be honest, oftentimes, and I'm going to be very candid, I didn't do an inventory for one of my libraries. And I'll be very honest, we were considered a satellite of the public library. So the software we used, and this was a nightmare unto itself, and something I would rant about in my early years as a podcaster, we had to use the software that the public library used. And that is garbage, friends, because public libraries do not support patrons the same way we do. So it was a cluster. It was a mess. And I'll tell you, a nightmare to be able to work because we could never do an effective inventory because we would be dismantling a satellite of the public library's network. And that was no bueno. That's not going to happen. So for me, I got really good at visual inventory because I was never going to get those numbers. I was never going to get those stats. And I was trusting not just my intuition, but what I see in terms of lending habits of my students to be able to say, I can tell you right now, these books are going to go. And I don't have to have the numbers to prove it. But I think that's really important because, the why of having an inventory is because our community deserves a vibrant collection. We are not an archive. Ever. We are not an archive. Just because somebody used these books at some point doesn't mean we're just going to hold on to them because we have space. That absolutely. In the same way, friends, and I think when I talk to teachers about, inventory and then consequently getting rid of things, it's a lot like your closet. Just because you have room in your closet doesn't mean you need to hold on to all those things. And, when you make the comparison to something like somebody's wardrobe, the likelihood of you pulling up and wearing something that you wore 20 or 30 years ago, you may still fit it. You have no business wearing it. Oh, goodness gracious. So, yes, I agree. Librarians understand why, but teachers and administrators may not. And this is really where we need this kind of evidence to support what we're going to be doing. Let's talk about the when you do an inventory, because I think there are several answers that would satisfy this question. What is the best time to do an inventory?
Honestly, you have to find what works for you. Now, ideally, if you can do it close to the end of the year, so that you have an idea of what is still out, those books that got checked out the first week you had library classes come in and they're still out, to remind kids to gently bring them back. It can depend on the volume that you have in terms of your collection and how much time it's going to take you. I before our conversation started, I pulled up my last inventory. We had some work days in late April last year, so that's when I did my inventory because it was a day that I knew I could just sit, work through all of the shelves. I wouldn't really be interrupted, and I could just go. And it worked out great. I got through the whole collection, got it all done. If you have a genrefied collection, you might find it easier to do certain sections. Maybe you decide you're going to do one section a month so that it feels manageable. You can break up your fiction and nonfiction. Do a hundreds category. So today I'm going to do, this part of fiction and I'm going to do this part of nonfiction. And maybe you're going to say, I'm going to try and get it done this month. You can stop and start as much as you need to. And it can also depend on your time. Or the other thing that I think can affect your time, are you trying to apply for funding, apply for a grant, and you need an accurate reflection of your collection? You need that digital data to back that up. So think about that. The Laura Bush grant, which is, I know, a big grant that a lot of schools try and apply for. It's great if you're a Title I school, and that comes due at the end of November. So you may be thinking, okay, I really need an accurate account so that I know, oh, I'm really going to focus on my biography section. It's really outdated. Our teachers do biographies, and I need fresh information. So there's all these factors that go into place. It can also depend on, do you have help? Do you have someone who can help you complete your inventory? Because that can also weigh heavily on your time factor.
I like the permission to do partial inventories. It's not an all or nothing. This
Yes.
isn't, it doesn't have to be. I know that in my head, I've thought about like when stores do inventory, oftentimes it means shutting the stores down.
Yes.
And for us, that's not an option. And I appreciate there are some schools where the librarians have an extended calendar. You'd come in early, you stay longer into the school year or into the summer. But, for many people, especially if you are a solo librarian, it makes a great deal of sense to target an area of your collection that's maybe part of your goal this year, that you're going to be working on a certain area and building that out. You're going to dedicate some funds. Maybe it is driven by a grant. I know that when we apply for a grant, it makes a great deal of sense if you can target an area that's going to make a really big impact and pick maybe what you believe is probably the oldest area of your collection, inventory that, and then write that grant and say, look, and again, if you can swing it, do this when you come into a new collection, not a collection that's new to you. When you walk in, make sure at the very least you can do is get an average age of your collection before you've stepped foot into there, because so that you have a starting point for where you're going to go from here. This is my 5th year in my collection. The first thing I did when I walked in was I made sure I had a baseline for an average age of my collection, just so I knew where I was going from there. And look at when it was last inventoried, because it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. I know right now I just bought a lovely manga collection thanks to the residual ESSER funds that we had residual ESSER funds that we just sort of, hey, can you spend this in the next 6 days? Yes, I can. I don't need to inventory my manga collection anytime soon because the graphic novels and manga are all less than 3 years old based on when I was purchasing them.
It's also just, a great opportunity. If you are coming in new to a space, and if you can look and see that the last time an inventory was done was over a decade ago. I know the first library that I started in, when I left, there were a lot of shifts and changes, and my friend eventually took over the library. And she said, I know the last time any reports were done, Katie, because it had your name on them. So it can absolutely be a reflection of that. I also think about if you are a school that collects overdue fines or tries to collect money for lost or missing books. If there has been no one consistent in your space, if no one has done an accurate inventory in a long time, there is sometimes a very good chance, especially if you have littles, that that book has got put back on the shelf. And until you start making your way through the shelves, because it's also a great way to find things that are out of order, that aren't in the right space, you may find a lot of things. When I've done them before, I could see books that had last been checked out a decade ago. they're not coming back. Let's just mark them as lost and clear them out of the system because they have come and gone at this point. So all those things weigh into an inventory and can impact your day-to-day in the library.
I know that way back in the very beginning of my library experience, my very first library, I had actually a parent march down after school with their kid, which is really, I'm sorry, in the States, we're not supposed to have parents in the building during just wandering around. It was like, I'm sorry, can I help you? And she was like, yeah, you told my child that we lost the book. I said, well, your child didn't bring the book back. And she looked at her daughter, and her daughter's like, yes, I did. And I was like, okay, just like that. Like, yes, I did. I was like, okay, well, did you put it in the book slot so I could check it in? I was like, no, I just put it back on the shelf. I was like, oh. And I said, honey, where did you put the book back? And then they sort of swung their arm and said, over there. And I was like, can you go find it? I was like, and this parent is watching. I was like, okay, so you understand why I did not have the book because it was not put in the book slot where we return our books. And, a little mental note, we have to be a little more specific. When we're turning our books back in, the kids thought that they were helping me by putting it back on the shelf. I was like, oh.
Yes, where things go. Yes, I've had similar experiences, Amy, because my elementary school that I started at, when they built the school, they had closed two other schools, combined them together. The school had been open 10 years when I got there, but there were still books with both of the previous schools' names on the barcode, plus anything that had been bought new. And when I would send home notices about your student hasn't brought this book back, well, they would come back with a note and they would be like, oh, I thought this was a discard we got from the public library because it had the wrong name in it. And I was like, no, ma'am, it's because, it's a combined collection. There's still books with the other two schools' names. It's still actively in our collection. Yes. So, another good thing to look at in inventory. So if you're inheriting one of those situations, it also comes with its own problems and challenges.
My building effectively changed names. And
Yes.
we went from having two high schools to having one high school. And so that collection was included into the collection that I have. So it already dates the book because everybody
Yes.
knows that the merge happened in 2006. So if we have a book with the other school's name on it, that collection had that all happened or was purchased before 2006. It was like, oh no, because it's 2025.
I know. Been there, done that, Amy. That was my COVID year in the library because we were moving from one building to a new building and our name was changing. The building was staying a school, but the name had to stay with the building. So I had to pack everything up during COVID, and then we moved it and then had to re-barcode everything with the new name. So when kids would bring a book back and it still had the old name, I was like, oh, sweetheart, this has been gone like 4 years. I've marked it as lost. Like, you can just keep it. It's fine. I don't need it back.
So, Katie, I would love to ask you because this is a very time-consuming activity. It doesn't matter if you have a big collection, a little collection. It is time-consuming. It's also tedious. So let's talk about by whom, because I will be the first to admit when I taught littles, I had parent volunteers. And my parent volunteers love scanning. They love scanning. And most software systems have we can use a wireless, some sort of wireless scanner. Thank you. That's wonderful. And so I've experienced both parent volunteers. I've had library assistants who have scanned books. And I've also had in my current library, a full-time, my assistant who will scan the books as well. So I've done all three. And the key here is I'm not scanning the books.
And whereas usually it's me scanning, Amy. It's usually me who has been the one scanning because I have not had an assistant. I will say it's a good kind of mindless task, honestly, if you just need to decompress a little bit and just work your way through. But I have at times had help when I have worked in a middle school. I've had students who have helped me, and it's absolutely something that an assistant can do, that kids can do, that you can have parent volunteers do. I would always, like with any task, training is involved. You have to show them what you are looking for, what's involved. I would also caution you that with most of us, I'm a Destiny user. That's what is our library catalog system. But with our level of access as the administrator over Destiny for our school library, we have access to a lot of things. So I would caution people not to give your login to your student helpers, to your assistant, to your parent volunteer, but in the backside of Destiny, and I would think with most other library software programs, you can set up different accounts that have different levels of access for things. So I would make an inventory student or an inventory volunteer. And so they have access to get into the inventory, but not change anything, do anything. You just need them to have access to get in and scan things and to know what to do. So if a barcode isn't scanning, how do we pull that off the shelf, mark it, tag it for later, like it needs to have a reprint? Can you type in the barcode, at least for the time being, but remember that we've got to fix this, adjust this. And also, when I'm doing my inventory, this is like a great time for me. I'll have my genre stickers and label tape and things like that. So if you see small things that need like a quick repair, it's a great way to also accomplish those things as you're just scooting along the shelves and scanning everything and working on things. Like realizing, oh, why is this one Dire for Wimpy Kid in this section of the collection when everything else is over here? So it's a great way to sort of fix and adjust things too as well when you're just working your way through.
Well, and something that I've also come to appreciate, it is such a mind-numbing experience to do inventory. I created like a checklist on a clipboard because you get so like entrenched in what you're doing, you may not realize which section you're in. And you are never more aware of the extent of your collection until you realize you have to scan everything.
Yes.
And so I remember breaking down, I had a clipboard and I was very specific when I worked with volunteers of any kind. And to delineate, okay, which section are you working in? If you remember, our libraries, oftentimes the books are in a myriad of configurations. You've got books that are sitting in your office needing to be repaired. Those books will miss inventory if you're not careful. I have a section in my back office.
Your display books, that's the space I always forget, Amy, and I have to go back and remember, did I scan these?
And if you have books on top, like I have like books on my tables,
Yes.
like, and I do displays, but I also have, I mean, there was a time when I had a reference collection. My current collection doesn't have a
Yes.
reference collection. Those books have to be inventoried as well. And, you know, if you want to break it down by biography section, if you want to do it by, you know, by your different genres or your fiction section, your nonfiction section, but it absolutely, you are very aware of everything that is, I mean, you might even have a professional collection. And then if you run that collection, it says, you know, you're still missing a significant part of your collection. You're like, what am I missing? And once upon a time, I had a magazine collection, if you can believe it.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
And the other thing I think people don't think about, if someone comes into your space or people are helping you, is the beep. the beep every time you scan a book. I have been doing an inventory one year. It was the end of the year and they were cleaning in the front office. My principal said, "Can I just come sit in here?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I'm just scanning along. And it hasn't, maybe it's been 5 minutes. And he's like, "What is that noise? Is that not driving you crazy?" And I said, "What noise?" And he said, "The beeping." I was like, "What beeping?" "Oh, you mean my inventory scanning?" "Oh, no, I don't even hear that." And he was like, "That's not driving you crazy?" I said, "No."
You also have to recognize that if you aren't hearing it beep,
Yes, that's a problem.
there's another
Yeah.
problem. And I know that if you use student volunteers who have headphones
Yes.
on, friends, this is a problem. Likewise, you cannot have, because I had parent volunteers who thought they could have their personal conversations while they were working in my space, even though there were no students. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I do not want to hear your conversation. Please don't do that.
Yes.
But also, if you're wearing headphones or you're listening to music, this cannot work because there are good beeps, there are bad beeps. If there's no beep, that's a problem. So absolutely be cognizant that on the one hand, you're like, oh, it's a great time to listen to your audiobooks. No, it's not.
Not with your headphones on. Not with your headphones on. There are sounds you have to hear. Yes.
So I want to share this comes with having been in this profession for a while. Let's talk about some things that might not be related, but they are. Because when we're doing inventory, there are a lot of things that you also have to consider that are key, but not necessarily relevant when you're doing, making these decisions. Barcode placement. Here is, you want to start a fight in a crowded room of librarians. Let's talk about the best place to put your barcodes, because I'm not going to lie, for years, one of the first libraries I had, they put the barcode on the inside cover of a book. And it was a real mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you what, you put and I will tell you why.
A lot of public libraries do that, which is interesting to me.
You know why? Because they have those sensors that read through the books.
Yes.
And I told you, we were a satellite collection for our public library, which meant that everybody did what the public library did, which was put the barcodes in the center of the book. Except here's the thing. If you go into the public branch, they just wave that book over something. And I said to them, I was like leaning over. I said, "Hi, I'm one of the public librarians over I'm one of the librarians over the school." And I introduced myself, and we sort of, we knew each other. I said, "I'm sorry, forgive me. How are you scanning that book?" And they're like, "Oh, it's a sensor that's installed underneath our desks." And I was like, "Okay, so our problem is we don't have those sensors in the school."
I don't even want to think about how much that costs, Amy.
I know. We had to open the book and scan the barcode. Yes. And thankfully, I had an assistant in the elementary school where I worked, because the engaging with the software that was chosen by the public library and the barcode too, the difficulty that it created for us on a day-to-day basis was enough for me to go, you know what? There are better ways to do this. I'm leaving. Anyway, but
yes,
they could just wave their book across their laps, across the desk, and it checked in. We had to open each book to do an inventory. Yes. It was terrible.
And I have been in libraries where, and this is just remnants of a bygone era, that they had a barcode inside the book and outside the book. The theory being that if the outside barcode got damaged, you had one inside that would scan. And so I can kind of understand that, but that is your only option is definitely, that's a challenge. That's going to make it time consuming. And the barcode placement thing, everyone has their preference about where they want it located. I have come to, especially with my older kids, that I need the books to have visual appeal, like they would in a bookstore, because with high schoolers, with our secondary kids, with your middle schoolers too, we're fighting the tech. We're fighting to try and get them to engage with stuff. So I want it to look visually appealing. So I put the barcodes on the back. And it's also, I've come to that realization after years of kids trying to scan the purchase barcode on the back instead of my library barcode. So I have, in previous collections where it was on the front, I have covered all the barcodes on the back, so there was no choice but for them to scan the barcode that I wanted. Now with my current collection, I usually just attach the barcodes myself because they actually come quicker and they come cheaper if I attach them myself. I don't mind that. That's a task I don't mind. I find it kind of soothing and relaxing to process the books. I enjoy processing the books, but I know that drives some people crazy, that the volume is too high. They can't do it. But letting me place it myself, because sometimes, the barcodes are in a weird spot and I can put it wherever I want on the back, but it still makes it relatively easy when I'm doing inventory. I'm just pulling them out and I'm just facing the right way so I see the back of the book and scanning. If there's a few in odd places, it's not the end of the world. And it's something I feel like we're always working towards to get them maybe what works best for us, what works best for our kids, what's most feasible.
I'm wondering, do you cover the manufacturer's barcode with your school barcode? Because I've seen that
I do.
in some libraries.
Yes.
All right.
I do.
Because they do. Then you're not going to mistake
yes.
the manufacturer's ISBN and the barcode for yours.
Because that's something else you have to consider if you've got people helping you inventory. Make sure they're actually scanning the right barcode. If they're scanning that purchase barcode, they're not scanning anything. So
I've been very partial to you're only pulling the book out just a couple centimeters so that you can see the barcode on the edge of the book, and whether it's on the front cover, it's on the back, you're not taking the whole book out and opening it up to scan a barcode on the inside of the book. You don't have to take the book off the shelf. You can just sort of pull it back a little bit and you'll see the barcode without having to remove it entirely. Another surprise for a lot of folks is just how old your collection is. And this can be a little soul-crushing, especially if you don't have a way to replace the books that need to be replaced. If your ability to turn over those collections, or obviously this is where grant writing becomes really imperative. Some of us, those ESSER funds came in handy after the pandemic, but this is a real a wake-up call when you look at those numbers and you're like, really? That's terrible. My kids deserve better.
And that was absolutely a situation that I was in at a previous school. I came in, there had only been 2 previous librarians in the history of the school, and the school had been built sometime in the late 60s, early 70s. There were still books with 1960 publications that I assume were probably textbooks that the first librarian had used sitting on shelves in the back. There were still books from the 60s and 70s on the shelves. It was a collection that was 2/3 nonfiction and 1/3 fiction at a high school. And this was post-COVID. There was ESSER money that hadn't been spent, and the average age was about 1996. So this was 2001. So we were talking really, really old and lots of nonfiction that was just out of date. A huge reference collection, and our district at that point had been 1-to-1 with devices at the secondary level for over a decade. We're very lucky that our state provides us access to Britannica and EBSCO databases for free. So we have tons of great resources. And it just was not something, when the books are so big and so heavy that they won't even fit in a kid's backpack, nobody is taking this home. And when the fiction books are Tom Clancy and Mary Higgins Clark. Not exactly things that high school students are coming in and begging me to get copies of. So both a visual inventory and a digital inventory let me see and clarified what I already knew was that most of this needed to go. Now, I could have gotten rid of everything that really needed to go, and then there would have been almost nothing left. But I gave myself if it was published before the year 2000, if it started with a 1, it needed to go. It needed to at least have a 2 in the publication date. So it really freed up a lot of shelf space. We had $5,000 in ESSER money to spend on books. I spent it on largely fiction and a little bit of some current nonfiction. We do Battle of the Books, so I picked old Battle of the Books, things from our Battle of the Books list for high school, things I knew that were popular with my middle school kids that would also be popular with high school, and then was able to get another $2,000 from the school. So I spent about $7,000 on new books for this library and got the average age from 1996 to like 2003. So at least we were in the right century now.
Well, and I love that you mentioned administration, because when you show these numbers to administrators, they're not going to understand. Show them the big picture. This is the average age of our collection. And you can say, I've done an inventory. This isn't about me just asking for money. I'm going to back that up with actual hard stats and be able to show this to you. So no, absolutely. The other thing that to me is always unexpected, and it's really hard to realize, but how much of your collection walks away, how much of it has actually left, and what kind of informal borrowing practices are happening. I know that some can be attributed to folks who just, oftentimes I've had staff who are like, look, Amy, I'll bring this bike back. I'm in the building. And I was like, okay, wait. Just because you're in the building, no, it's called theft. No, we're gonna check this out to you. I realize you work in the building. I realize the book's not leaving the building. They thought as long as the book didn't leave the building, they didn't have to check it out. I was like, wait a minute.
No.
I said, I'm a little bit of a control freak. I blame it on the profession. I'm like, look, we just have to know who has it. You're welcome to have this book in your room and let me know how long you need it. That's fine. A lot of libraries circulate materials to their teachers for longer periods of time, or we adjust the due dates so that they're not getting a reminder as often as our students might. But understand that for many teachers, their expectation is these are the books that belong to the school. They're there for them to use. And therefore, as a teacher, we can just sort of exercise that, hey, you weren't here, Amy. So I was like, whoa. What books do you have? So that I'm not trying to find them, because the collection doesn't know that you're a teacher. The collection doesn't know you just walked out with a big arm full of books. The other thing also that's happening is a lot of times students are either fearful of checking a book out because they have other books out, or they have lost books in the past. Library trauma. They do not want us to know that they have a book, because they either have a book that is been ruined or long since overdue, but they just put the book in their bag, and that's not borrowing a book.
That can be hard. For me, while we might have a set number limit that the catalog is set to, that has never been my barrier or list for the amount of books a student can take. I can remember one student who I had at the middle school and had again at the high school, and she graduated last year. And she was the one, she'd check out one and then check out another one and check out another one. And I'd say, Michaela, you have 6 books out now. Have you finished any of them? Oh, yeah, Miss Moose. Where are they? In my backpack. I said, okay, hun, why don't you go back to class and go get those ones you've finished, and let's check those in, because because you're getting a really overwhelming list and you're done with some of them. And sometimes it's a matter of reminding kids, like, please don't keep these books hostage all year, that if they're popular titles and you only have so many copies, it's like, if you're done, then I really need you to bring this back. And, for our littles, they don't always understand. So, trying to understand that, everybody wants to read the Pinkalicious book. You can't just hoard all the Pinkalicious books with you and with our teachers too. I know a lot of times I would pull big stacks of books for my elementary teachers because, it's fall, they're doing a theme on bats, so they want bats books. But I have to remind them, well, I want to keep some bat books here as well because you're learning about that in the classroom and the kids want to come check out a book about bats here as well. You can't just have every single book I have on this topic because then that really limits who has the ability to share it and experience it. And sometimes it's just kids don't understand or stuff doesn't work because I've certainly had the kids say the scanner wasn't working, Miss Moose, and they write down the title, not realizing that we have like 6 copies of that title. So that doesn't really tell me what title which one they took, which copy they took. But I'm like, well, hopefully they'll bring it back.
Exactly.
But there's always some attrition with library books. It's just how it goes.
It's the nature of the beast. It is a good problem when kids are coming and they're borrowing books. We hope that they check them out. Sometimes, they just kind of get put in their backpacks and, we find out because we check the books in and you're like, son of a gun, this was never checked out. You're like, okay, well, note to self, the next time we do this, let's check the books out. And I make that really clear with my incoming 9th graders now because we're doing an orientation and our first book checkout. And I have to say to them, I said, first of all, if you still have books at the middle school, that's okay. But you and I are going to talk about it because I have a cart and I'm going to put those books in a mailer and I'm going to get them back to our middle school librarian. You're still welcome to check out books here. But since I can pull up and I said, listen, do you know where these books are? I need you to bring those back because you know what? We're going to get those back to the middle school librarian. Nobody's in trouble here, but you got to help me out because those books, you're done with those books. You're done with them. Yes, you don't want to goof up the librarian's inventory at the middle school just because the books never got turned back in. So no.
Just that reminder and acknowledgement when I say, do you have any of these for middle school? Oh, yeah, they're at home. Well, honey, if you just bring them to me, I'll get them back. And they're like, really? Yes, because ultimately we just want the books back because most of us don't have a budget. There's no money. So we just would really like you to return the book, hopefully still in decent condition. That...
Absolutely. Katie Moose, it is time to go. You and I have work tomorrow. We've had a lovely holiday weekend. I'm so grateful for your expertise. It is always fun to talk to a veteran, a seasoned school librarian, somebody who can look back on the years spent in the library. And we've always got a couple good stories. Listen,
yes.
Katie, would you let listeners know if we wanted to follow you on social media or if you wanted to reach out to you, what would be the best way to reach out and connect with you?
Yes. So you can always reach out to me at my NC SLAMA email with our state organization. It's just Katie Moose at NC SLAMA. So that's ncslma.org. I'll be at our conference in October. So I hope you'll come up and say hello and say hi. I'll be presenting. I'll be at some of the booths helping cover stuff. So don't hesitate to come up and say hello, whether we've ever met in person or not, or virtually, whatever it is. Yes, I am on Blue Sky. You can find me there as well. I am still on Twitter as well. And so Amy will put my handles in the show note. I am trying to be better about responding and posting in my social medias. And I'm lurking in Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. So if you have librarian in your handle, then I will absolutely totally friend you back. And you can see Amy and I have circled each other there for years because we're both commenting on the same posts and questions and comments. But yes, you can absolutely reach me there. And I always check my email, so it's a good place to reach. Actually, because of this, Angela Myers and I got to connect, and Angela sent the photo to Amy when we got to talk over the summer, bouncing ideas off of each other. We made it happen. We did connect.
I love it. I love it. So, friends, I'm so grateful. Katie, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I take a great deal of your recommendations, and it really does help. I know a lot of folks who are going to be doing inventory this year. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I hope you have a fantastic school year, and thank you for your expert advice today.
Of course, Amy. I hope you have a great school year as well. I hope everybody's getting off to a good, exciting, amazing start, and the 2025-2026 is a great school year for everybody.
Friends, if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. If you are curious to know how often your state or country has been featured on the podcast, simply click on the link, which can be found in our show notes. Search by title, author, state, and country, and do a Command F search. I hope this is the year that you consider being a guest on the show, and you'll realize just how easy it is. We all have something to share. Make Season 8 your time to shine. And friends, while we're on the topic of considering being a guest on the show, today we had an episode about best practices of something foundational that we all do, sometimes well, sometimes barely. But library inventory is really foundational, and we did a best practices episode. I would love to see this bloom into like a series of other best practices. And if you have an idea for another best practices episode, which you would like to do with me on the show, pitch me an email. Just send me an email with your ideas. Say, I want to do a best practices episode on fill in the blank. And just let me know, because you're an expert on something and we sure could benefit from it. So I would truly appreciate you taking that time and consider being a guest on the show. I hope you take a look at the link to Junior Library Guild in our show notes. Use the code UNITED15 and receive 15 free books with your first shipment. Friends, I'm currently juggling several outlines and tentative recording dates. You can be sure our upcoming episodes will showcase amazing school librarians sharing their strategies and resources. I hope you will tune in.